Okay, the presentation season continues, and after OpenAI and Google, we got Microsoft's presentation. And now we know why OpenAI did not release the ChatGPT Desktop app for Windows. So let's talk about it. So in recent years, I find that Microsoft and Google are kind of switching places. Google have become a more enterprise corporate, purely kind of ecosystem company, and Microsoft have become a lot more of an open source partnership and communication with other companies company. And today's Copilot Plus presentation has been the example of that. So first, for those who do not want to spend over an hour to watch something that could be condensed in 5 minutes, well, here's the condensed version for you. Microsoft presented the new Copilot Plus PCs, which is a combination of hardware, software, and a new reimagined, re-engineered version of Windows to be all around AI and Copilot, which is Microsoft's version of ChatGPT, essentially, running on OpenAI's models and infrastructure. This time, Microsoft have also presented their own hardware models and their own AIs that run on device directly, which mirrors what Google has been presenting in their presentation for the majority of the presentation. Microsoft Copilot Plus PC platform goes to all the layers from Windows to the device and hardware, including a dedicated NPU processor on the device itself, all the way to Windows itself being reimagined, re-engineered with over 40 different AI models running inside Windows itself. So Microsoft took a lot of the models that either OpenAI or other companies have done and have been integrated in Azure, and basically condensed them and put them on device to actually run on the Windows machine itself with the help of the TPU. I think that's pretty impressive, but it's not unlike what Google has presented with the Google Pixel just last week. It's also very interesting to see Microsoft working so closely with other partners, and they are slowly moving away from working with Intel towards working more with ARM processors, promising much better performance and much better battery life.
The new Surface laptop has nearly double the battery life.
However, as it is always with Windows, we can expect fragmentation, we can expect things not to work well, because as we saw, Apple nailed the transition from the Intel to the Apple Silicon. I do not have the same trust in Microsoft. However, they promised a new layer called Prism, which is very similar to Apple's Rosetta 2, basically a translation layer from x86, from Intel CPUs to ARM CPUs. And Microsoft is working very closely with Qualcomm's Snapdragon X processor. Microsoft also presented as part of the hardware a whole line of Surface Copilot Plus laptops, including a detachable one that I actually really like, that when the keyboard detaches from the laptop itself and you can use them separately or as a stand for the laptop. Very, very interesting stuff. Microsoft also presented a bunch of improvements to their Copilot, but even the desktop application for Copilot looks exactly like ChatGPT in its web version. And while GPT 4.0 is available now for everybody, Microsoft Copilot version with GPT 4.0 will only be available soon. So Microsoft not only builds on OpenAI's APIs, but also does it with quite a bit of a delay. And one more interesting thing that Microsoft have presented is a built-in feature in Windows, which I think they presented it only to kind of highlight the power of the on-device models, and they call it Recall. Recall is a Windows subsystem that maps all the different activities you have on your desktop and takes screenshots, continuous screenshots of what you do on your computer, and allow you to search or map things in different applications in different places and do that, essentially recall what you've been doing.
My family and I have been searching for the perfect dress for my grandma and browsing Pinterest and shopping websites for some options. With Recall, I can just search for blue dress, and it pulls together all the choices I have seen.
Microsoft promises that this fully runs on device. However, the amount of computational power that it requires and the analytics data and the training data that they could extract from that, I do not trust Microsoft that they do not send some of the screenshots and some of these inference back to the cloud for learning. They promise they don't. Can we trust them? Would you trust them? I don't know. And my absolute favorite part of the presentation was the Xbox. Microsoft presented a video showing a bunch of examples, all with a little text saying for presentation purposes only for Xbox. And they ended the presentation with
That was amazing.
Amazing. I mean, what is amazing? You didn't show anything. You made a simple video with stuff that's off the shelf and said for presentation purposes only on the bottom. Like, what is amazing? I mean, I feel that the Xbox brand has really lost its power. What are the conclusions that I personally make from watching this 1 hour long presentation that could have been an email? While I see that the difference between Google's and Microsoft's approach being very kind of obvious, with Microsoft being historically enterprise hardware oriented company and Google being fully cloud oriented consumer company, they switched places. Under Satya Nadella and his competition strategy, Microsoft have become a consumer company and Google have become an enterprise company. And Microsoft are killing it at the consumer space. A lot of the things they're doing it absolutely right. A lot of the emphasis in the presentation was about the language model being deeply integrated into Windows and running on device separately. I honestly wonder if that is actually true or if it's just marketing hype by Microsoft. It's also very interesting to see how Apple historically, outside of the Mac versus PC ads,
Hello, I'm a Mac. And I'm a PC.
have never even mentioned the presentation that anybody else exists, right? It's like always this iPhone is the best iPhone we ever released. This computer is 20% faster than the same computer we released half a year ago. And nobody else exists in the presentations. And yet Microsoft's presentation is exactly the opposite.
Most advanced MacBook Air with the
Latest MacBook Air 15.
And the latest MacBook Air.
Almost the whole presentation was comparing Microsoft to somebody else. In most cases, Apple. In most cases, MacBook Air 15-inch. I wonder why they insist on comparing to the Air and not the Pro. Is it because the size and weight are more similar, or is it because compared to the Pro, the numbers do not look as impressive? I did find the jab at the touchscreen support very funny.
As I zoom in here, when I zoom in here,
And of course, mentioning that their camera does not have a notch.
The new studio camera has been seamlessly incorporated into the bezels. No notch.
But I think at this point, Apple just uses the notch as part of the signature design language. With that said, when watching the presentation and demos of Adobe Photoshop and DaVinci Resolve Studio on the Surface, I honestly wanted the Surface for a few minutes. I'm curious to try the device and to see if the TPU really makes such a big difference. Don't worry, that lasted only a few minutes, and I'm sure that a lot of those optimizations are gonna be on the M3 soon as well. Also, did you see how public image have changed over the last few years when you look at the Intel CEO versus the Qualcomm CEO? The Intel CEO looks like an old school executive in a bank, or maybe like a Hollywood villain with a suit and a clean shaved and looking very sharp. At the same time, the Qualcomm CEO looks kind of like the comic relief in a sitcom. Unshaven, in a t-shirt, looks quite a bit clumsy, and yet he literally wipes the floor with Intel. Like, Qualcomm's market capital at the moment is almost twice bigger than Intel's. They, with the ARM CPUs and the mobile integrations and the new generation of laptop CPUs, have been performing amazingly well. So I think that this old image of kind of the corporate executive is no longer representative of success, and it's gonna disappear away from that world. And also, if we're already talking about hardware, what's up with tablets and rear-facing cameras? Like, who does take pictures with a tablet? Don't you have a phone on you, which probably has an actually better camera at this point? At the end of the day, Microsoft's biggest power is in their competition model and their partnership. It was very interesting to see how, as always, Microsoft lines up all the OEMs.
Acer,
Asus,
Dell, Lenovo, Samsung,
HP is all in.
all in.
All in.
All in.
All in.
All in.
But not only that, it also now works with all the chip manufacturers. So it's not like the Tensor CPU that Google have been doing or the Apple Silicon that Apple have been doing in-house, but Microsoft partners with Qualcomm and the Snapdragon X. So they work with an OEM. They work with all the OEMs to release Copilot Plus PCs. And interestingly enough, in all the slides when they present all the different partners, they present Microsoft Surface as just yet another partner. They don't put themselves outside of the OEM ecosystem, they equate themselves to them. kind of similar to what Google does with Samsung and all the other smartphone manufacturers and the Google Pixel line. So kind of leveling themselves with everybody else, not necessarily giving themselves an advantage compared to other manufacturers. And that doesn't end with hardware alone. The integration and work with OpenAI is enabling a lot of the things we saw in the demos today. One thing I was actually very impressed with was the co-create functionality. It's kind of mind-blowing to see that Paint have become this like AI painting software that can generate images, but now also use your prompt and your kind of crude sketch to create the image you want to create. Very similar to ControlNet inside Stable Diffusion. Speaking of that, I'm working on a Stable Diffusion tutorial that will be shared here shortly, very in-depth. I shared my opinion on both the Google and OpenAI presentations, so be sure to watch those as well if you haven't watched the actual presentations. Microsoft have also mentioned Google Chrome, Zoom and CapCut as part of the presentation, which the Microsoft of 10 years ago would never do that, would have been unimaginable, but in today's competition world, that's something they do all the time. Be sure to subscribe. We're still in the middle of the presentation season. 10th of June is WWDC, and I'm sure Apple will show us the other half of what OpenAI have been working on with them, especially considering the recent deal that is supposed to be signed between OpenAI and Apple. I'm sure that some of the things that OpenAI didn't show in their presentation, to see some of those, click on the video here, are going to be actually presented at WWDC together with Apple. So very interesting to see how Apple and Microsoft are working kind of side by side with the same partners. And stay tuned for the next presentation in the presentation season in WWDC in June. See ya.